Awesome. All right. So where we're gonna kick it off today is on page 72, and we're in the chapter Into Action. And I don't know about you, but this is exciting for me. Although I will say when I got here and it's like the chapter is called Into Action, I'm like, did you not see all that action I did in the fourth step? Could we have the into like laurel resting? You know what? That is an into action joke for later in the chapter. You know what I mean? Resting on my laurels into having a good old sitting on my progress. Nope. It's into action. And that really does imply the vigorous nature with which I am at least called to work this program. I'm called to do it and to do it quickly. And also an interesting thing, maybe you guys picked up on this, but there's a little bit of a momentum shift. See, we spend a number of chapters, doctor's opinion, Bill's story, there's a solution, more about alcoholism, really diving into the feature of step one. And then we spend a whole chapter on step two. And then we spend a chapter on step three and step four. And we're going to cover a whole bunch of steps in chapter six. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, which I don't know about you, that to me speaks with some velocity, you know? Oh, don't worry, clocks do not change where Scott lives. I don't know. I don't need to announce everything that happens in the chat, but it is important for me to point out if you have questions, throw it in the chat because I'm here for that. And I will go on tangents. That is what will happen. And it'll be a fun journey for everyone. Where will we end up? I don't know. All right, so into action. And so that's what's called action. And what I love about that is that means what I think doesn't matter. Thank goodness. Because anyone ever think any of these steps were a good idea? I thought for you guys, not for me. Do you know what I mean? What I feel, how I feel, doesn't matter. I can feel absolutely hopeless and beaten and broken. And actually, that's a good place for somebody like me to be. And I don't know about you, but like my beliefs, my thoughts about this stuff, what matters is the actions that I take. And that's why I really love the chapter Into Action. And it's so good. Keep in mind, anytime we start a brand new chapter, I'll be like, oh, it's so good. I won't say it's my favorite because then I'll just be lying to you every time we get to a new chapter because they're all so great. Anywho, all right, into action. Now, what we're diving into is step 5. So it says, having made our personal inventory, what shall we do about it? So it's a bit of a checklist. Did I make my personal inventory? Yes. And I love this. It says, we have been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship with our Creator. And if you've been coming to the study, you know I'm here for the sneaky prayers. I'm here for the sneaky promises. And I'm here for some real sneaky promises this week. But I love the sneaky descriptions of what a spiritual awakening looks like. So what are we after? What is the point of these 12 steps? Well, what am I trying to get with these 12 steps? Is spiritual awakening, a spiritual experience, getting connected with God. And if I didn't know what that looks like, here's what it looks like: a new attitude and a new relationship with my Creator. That's what I'm trying to build. And it says, and to discover the obstacles in our path. So really, what is the process of the 12 steps? It's about me looking to see what is blocking me from this power, which I'm calling God because it's got one syllable. And if I call it other ones, it'll take up all my time. I'm here for efficiency. So I need to see, and then I need to begin to clear away the stuff inside of me that's blocking me from God. So again, that's what we're doing. That's what we're here to do. That's the point of these 12 steps, and kind of alluded to, this is why we're going to have to do a 5th step. So it says, we have admitted certain defects. Is that my experience? That, I was kind of writing some of that inventory. I'm like, okay, yeah, I can see some of the defects that are in play in my life. We have ascertained in a rough way what the trouble is. To ascertain is to sort of figure out. Like, we figured out in a rough way what the trouble is. We're seeing some patterns of our selfishness, our self-centeredness. We're seeing the various aspects of our self-seeking, our dishonesty, our fears, our self-centered fears. We're seeing our inconsideration, our thoughtlessness. We're seeing this. And it says, we've put our finger on the weak items in our personal inventory. Check, check, check. And it says, now these are about to be cast out. Cast out. And I love that because this is pointing to 6 and 7. It is about to be cast out, which is to say removed from me, which is not me doing it. I mean, I have to do the 5th step, got to have that quiet hour, got to do my 6 and 7, but I am not the one that's got to overcome these things. I'm not the one that's got to be better than them. They are going to be removed from me. Thank goodness, because I don't know about you. I haven't had any success at removing my defects on my own. I am not successful at that. I always joke about, listen, I'll work on my procrastination later. You know what I'm saying? And so they are cast out. The power is taking them from me. And it says, and so again, I'm not doing the heavy lifting, but I am going to have to take action. So it says this requires action on our part. Oh man, it's almost like this chapter is called Into Action. They really want me to do some stuff here. Action. Which will mean that we have admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our defects. And that's what step 5 is. Now, when we look at the word admit, there's 2 ways to look at it. And I think most of us kind of look at it in this initial way as a bit of a confession. You know what I mean? I got to admit. Now, I always like to say this. I have to admit that I stole your car, I slept with your husband, and I peed on your carpet. I always want to let you guys know that that's not true. It was linoleum. I make that joke every week. And so that's one way to look at the word admit, a confession. Another way to look at that word admit is like, let's say, I promised God I wouldn't mention Taylor Swift and the Chiefs. I'll make amends to you after, but let's say I got a ticket to a Chiefs game and it would say admit 1, or a Taylor Swift concert if you're not here for the sports. And what would it say? Admit 1, right? And so, yeah, absolutely. And so what does that mean? Well, on the ticket, it means to be let in. So what am I doing? I'm letting in God and another human being, to letting in. And you guys probably all know my hoarder's house metaphor about, got all the stuff and I get it out of the house. And what am I doing? I'm letting in that light. That's what I need. I need God's light to work deep within myself. And yeah, Rob put it in the chat. We admit to ourselves for that awareness. And people might say, God already knows, but I'm letting in that light of God, and I'm admitting to myself for that awareness and for that concession. I am not these things, but I did do these things, and these are the defects I have. And I also want to point out, it says another human being. My first ever sponsor, God rest her, she said that when we come to the 5th step, there's 2 types of people. And the first type of people was her. And it's the first type of person is they stand on the mess of their life and they're like, yeah, I did that. That was her. She had that personality. I am the other sort of person where I would hide under the mess of my life. And it was like, oh my goodness, I did that. But what are we trying to get? And we'll see this when we get to the actual step 5 promises. That what we're going to be achieving is humility, another human being. I'm no better or no worse than anyone else, that we're equal. And for somebody like me, I'm dependent on God. Beautiful. So that's a wonderful question. So it says, why does it say wrongs on page 59, but defects on this page? And so this is something that I'll talk about next week, depending on how well I do this week, but I'll talk about it now because that's how my brain works. Why does it ask that I'm going to share the exact nature of my wrongs as it's written in the step? And then it talks about defects. We just read defects right there. And then it also talks about shortcomings. What's the difference between the exact nature of my wrongs, the nature of my defects, or the radiant expression of my shortcomings? Nobody calls it a radiant expression. That is harms, is what that is. But it's because they're synonyms. They're just words that mean the exact same thing. So the exact nature of my wrongs, my defects, and my shortcomings are the exact same thing. We'll talk about this again next week. But here's why. It doesn't make sense for me to share something with you and God in the 5th step, and then then become willing for something else to get removed, and then ask for a third separate thing to be taken away. It makes sense that I would share and then become willing and then ask for that exact same stuff to be taken away. And it was Chuck Chamberlain who asked Bill Wilson, because they were alive together then, and he was like, "What's the difference?" And he's like, "I just didn't want to use the same word over and over again." And yeah, Rob put in the chat, GSO has in the archives that Bill's like, they're the same thing in an international letter dated March. Oh, we're in March. Sorry, rarely do I have a calendar brain. I'm like, look, March, it's happening. 1963. Anywho, that was a tangent. I think it was fun though. Awesome. All right. So this brings us to the fifth step in the program of recovery mentioned in the preceding chapter. So again, the program is the steps. And I know if you're coming here, you're like, girl, I know that, but it's important. The program is the tangible actions of the steps. And so now what we transition to, there's in step 5, there's a couple sections. The first section is, why do I gotta do a fifth step? That's section 1. Followed by section 2, which is who do I do it with? Followed by section 3, it's very short, how I do it. Followed by section 4, the results of doing it. So let's rock and roll into section 1. Why do I gotta do it? And I love this because this is the book meeting us where we're at. It says, this is perhaps difficult. Yeah, I don't want, anyone here excited to do a fifth step? Oh boy, I can't wait. And I mean, listen, why do we sit on step 4? I'm afraid of step 5. That's why. Absolutely. We're scared of this. It says, this is perhaps difficult, especially in discussing our defects with another person. We think we've done well enough in admitting these things to ourselves, book meeting us where we're at, and now the book taking us where we need to go. There is doubt about that. In actual practice, we usually find a solitary self-appraisal insufficient. Me trying to have a look at me and appraise me, that's usually not good enough. And something that I reflect upon is, if a solitary self-appraisal is insufficient in step 5, is it possible that a solitary self-appraisal is insufficient in step 10, perhaps also in step 11, where I continue the inventory process in those steps? Gotta be sharing this stuff with people, taking my inventory to others. Which, by the way, if you're new, you're like, oh, there's more? Oh, no, it's great. Honestly, I wouldn't keep doing it if it wasn't great. It's fun. It's okay if you're like, it's not fun yet. Keep doing it till it is. It will get there. Woo! So, solitary self-appraisal, insufficient. It does not work. Many of us thought it necessary to go much further, to actually do the fifth step. We will be more reconciled to discussing ourselves with another person when we see good reasons why we should do so. So I'm going to be more open to doing the fifth step. Give me a good reason, which, man, isn't that like such the book meeting us where we're at, but also implying we're a little bit toddlers? I'm not saying that we're not. I'm just saying, like, give me one good reason. Doesn't that feel like the argument? Give me one good reason why I got to do a fifth step. The best reason first. Here we are. If we skip this vital step, we may not overcome drinking. Now, last week, we saw a warning as direct and pointed as this. Last week, it was, if we do not live up to our sex ideal and our conduct continues to harm others, we are sure to drink. It also says, so right now, if I skip this step, I may not overcome drinking. That's a pretty, vital, important, essential, life-giving, right? You go to the hospital, they check your vitals. If I want to stay sober, if I want to stay alive, I've got to do this. Now, keep in mind, there's times where I was not wanting to be alive, feeling sober. If I want happy, joyous, contented sobriety, I got to do a fifth step. And in my experience, I had to do more than one. So best reason first, highlight, underline, if we skip this vital step, we may not overcome drinking. Time after time, newcomers have tried to keep to themselves certain facts about their lives. What are the facts that I would want to keep about my life? It's not that, like, I resent my boss or that I think my spouse is a jerk. It's those deep, dark secrets. That's the stuff I don't want to share with anyone. It says, trying to avoid this humbling experience, they have turned to easier methods. And this is important. almost invariably, which is almost always, pretty well always, they got drunk. So again, if I do not do this, if I do not share the stuff that's eating away at my soul, I will get drunk. Having persevered with the rest of the program, they wondered why they fell. And to be fair, I don't know too many people that didn't do a fifth step that went out and made a vigorous amends, that really went and cleaned up the past and then, worked with others. To be fair, I haven't seen that. But what I will say is I've seen a lot of people drink not doing their fifth step. So having persevered with the rest of the program, they wondered why they fell. We think the reason is that they never completed their house cleaning. They took inventory all right, but they hung on to some of the worst items in stock. And again, what are the things that I don't want to share? Those are the things that carry the most guilt and the most shame, and the things that I think separate me from you and make me so much worse than you, and you couldn't possibly understand me and the things that I've done. And I really want to emphasize, there's not anything special about me. Like, I'm just a drunk, also a crackhead. I'm multifaceted. It's an all-inclusive study, so you got to see all the facets. I'm a drunk and a crackhead. Woo! But there's nothing special about me. And I just hear inventory from regular alcoholics, plain old drug addicts. But I want you to know there's not a secret I haven't heard. You know what I mean? And I don't mean that to scare anyone. I really mean that. And I would never do this because this would make everyone really uncomfortable. But I could list some things, maybe about 5 things. And I bet I would nail that deep, dark secret. We're so not alone. And I don't know that until I take the action of step 5. But I'll tell you really and truly, when I really begin to have freedom from that separation from humanity, that I'm somehow different or worse, is when I begin receiving 5th steps. And we get to see how so similar we truly all are. And there's that saying, like, here's the deal. If you can write it down, if you can put it on your 4th step, if you can put pen to paper on it, you know what that means? That means there is a word for it. That means we as a society had to develop language to describe it, which means you're not so special because we had to, create language. Also, here's the deal. If there is a law against it, if you're like, oh, but you don't understand what I did, it's illegal. You know what that means? That means that so many people were doing it that the government had to be like, girl, no, we're going to make some laws. You don't do it. No. So again, we're not that special. And that's really the freedom. And so where we're at on page 73 is what I like to call the Missy Elliott promises. And you can make a little note in your book that they're the Missy Elliott promises, but do not necessarily take that to meetings or your sponsor and talk about that in a very knowing way. Yes, as they say in the Missy Elliott promises. Because it's just a thing that I kind of sort of made up. And if you're wondering how my brain works, it's like this. So I'm going to read through them and then I'm going to explain how they are the Missy Elliott promises. So it says they took inventory all right, but they hung on to some of the worst items in stock. They only thought they had lost their egoism and fear. They only thought they had humbled themselves, but they had not learned enough humility, fearlessness, and honesty in the sense that we find it necessary until they told someone else all their life story. For all their life story, you can make a note that we're talking about step 4. It's not a biography. We're going to share that 4th step and share those deep, dark secrets, get that out. Now, anyone here who remembers the early 2000s will remember that there was a song by Missy Elliott, and it's called Work It. Is it? Or is it reverse it? Hold on. It's called Work It. Into Action. Its chapter is Into Action. It's called Work It. It's Missy Elliott. And she starts the song by saying, is it worth it? And if you're wondering, it is. The program of action, the spiritual awakening, I promise you it is worth it. She responds to that with, let me work it, which, that means she's really, really into this program of action. She's working it vigorously. And if you think there's another meaning, that's weird. It's weird that you think that. No, 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 no. And later on, she's like, you got a big. And then when they played it on Much Music or MTV for the Canadians or the radio, they blur it with an elephant noise. She's like, you got a big. Let me search it. And clearly, she's talking about you got a big book. Let me search it for clear-cut directions to produce a spiritual awakening. Missy Elliott just loves big book studies. I mean, like, that's the only thing that I can glean from that song. I don't know about you guys. It's weird if you see anything else in it. So I shouldn't just casually gaslight the big book study. That's not cool. But in it, she says, I put my thing down, flip it, and reverse it. And then it's like, but, you know, better in Missy Elliott. So let's flip down, flip it, and reverse it. So if I hold on to the worst items in stock, if I don't do this fifth step, I'm only going to think that I lose my egoism and fear. I think I humble myself, but I'm not going to really learn these things. So let's see, I do this fifth step. I take that leap of faith and I bear all. What will happen? Well, a promise is that I will lose my egoism and fear. I will humble myself. You know that, and that humbling is, I'm not subservient. Well, maybe for somebody like me with God, like I'm following God's direction to the best of my ability, but I'm no better, no worse than you. And I will learn, and it's not a learn as an intellectual book learning. It is the learning that we're experiencing, that experiential knowing, learning enough humility, fearlessness, and honesty. Those are the results from the fifth step. I'm gonna flip down, flip it, and reverse it. Yeah, Missy Elliott. So yeah, and you know, I just heads up, if I don't know how appropriate all the lyrics are, they might imply some other things, but I mean, we can always write inventory on those other things. That's what the steps are for. We get it. All right. So back on 73. Everyone's just watching Missy Elliott. No one's listening to me now. Anywho, more than most people, the alcoholic leads a double life. Was that my experience? He is very much the actor. To the outer world, he presents his stage character. This is the one he likes his fellows to see. He wants to enjoy a certain reputation, but knows in his heart he doesn't deserve it. And it's a little bit of a callback to step 3, when we have the metaphor of the actor and the director, right? I'm on stage and I want to present to you this certain type of page. You know what I'm saying? I want to present to you looking well, doing the right thing. But I know that behind the scenes, behind the curtains, I'm not behaving. I'm not living up to that. You know what I mean? And I don't know about you, but the most pain that I have ever felt in my life was when there was a terrible distance between the mask that I was wearing and the person I was trying to portray and who I knew in my heart who I really was. That was painful. And it says the inconsistency is made worse by the things he does on his sprees. Coming to his senses, he is revolted at certain episodes he vaguely remembers. These memories are a nightmare. You know, coming to the morning after and having that moment, oh God, please don't let that be real. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, that stuff. He trembles to think someone might have observed him. As fast as he can, he pushes these memories far inside himself. Anyone else? Just stuff that right down, right? He hopes they will never see the light of day. See, I want to push them down. And what happens is they grow in that darkness. I'm sure we've all heard that saying in the rooms, you know, not our secrets keep us sick, but they grow in the dark. See, the more that I try to hide that secret, the more I try to push it down, the more I try to pretend it never happened, the more it grows. But if I let a little bit of God's light on it, man, it dissipates. It dissipates. And so he is under constant fear and tension. That makes for more drinking. Psychologists are inclined to agree with us, which is, I mean, not rarely does that happen. I mean, just in a general sense, rarely are psychologists inclined to agree with alcoholics and drug addicts. You know, I had some I did a lot of like counseling, therapy, psychology, psychiatry over the years. It's weird how little they agreed with me. That's just a little tangent. Anywho, we have spent thousands of dollars for examinations. We know but a few instances where we have given these doctors a fair break. We have seldom told them the whole truth, nor have we followed their advice. Do you know what they do? I'm just going to let y'all know. Just spoilers. Doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, if you tell them you might have a bit of an alcohol problem or a drug problem, do you know what they do? They take the number that we give them and they triple it. They know they're on to us, you guys. They do. Yeah, I know some of you are like, oh no, they know, right? And I love that it says we weren't honest with them, but we also didn't follow their advice. You know, anyone here ever have that experience where it's like, man, the 12 steps don't work. They don't work for me. And we didn't actually do them. And we're like, man, my sponsor just doesn't know what they're talking about. We didn't do the thing that our sponsor usually repeatedly asked us to do, which is typically stuff that comes from this chapter in particular. You know what I mean? We didn't do that. And then we're really upset that we didn't get the results of the work that we didn't do, you know? Yeah, just me then. Okay. Nah, so you guys know what's up. All right. So it says, unwilling to be honest with the sympathetic men, we were honest with no one else. Small wonder that many in the medical profession have a low opinion of alcoholics, their chance for recovery. We must be entirely honest with somebody. And I think this is important. I don't have to be entirely honest with everyone. We're going to use some discernment. I'm not going to necessarily, well, I probably could actually at this point. I could do a fifth step with all of y'all. It'll be a long one. I'm a writer. Got lots of defects. I'm kidding. I won't hold you hostage. But we must be entirely honest with somebody. This is important for me. If we expect to live long or happily in this world. And I got here in my early 20s. And that long or happily is something that is so important for me. Because, man, if you would have told me in my early 20s that I was going to have a long life, I would have been pissed. You know what I mean? I don't think there would have been anything worse, me living my life the way that I was living it. You know what I mean? It was awful and it was painful. And I was kind of hoping, I was not just hoping, I was intentionally taking actions for that to get a whole lot shorter real quick. But if I want to live a long life and I want to live a happy life, I need to be entirely honest with someone. And so now is where we begin to transition into who do we take this 4-step inventory to? Who do we do our 5th step with? It says, rightly or naturally, we think well before we choose the person or persons with whom to take this intimate and confidential step. And what I want to point out is, keep in mind, like it says person or persons. There are times where you can take, and again, I will say fun. You don't have to get on the fun boat with me. But I think it is fun to take one inventory to multiple people and kind of get their feedback and do multiple 5th steps with inventory. You can do that. There's not rules. There's suggestions for sure, but they're not like rules. Well, I mean, actually, there is a rule. The rule is we must be hard on ourselves and always considerate of others. Sorry, there's a rule right here. We got, focusing. But you can also, sometimes when, heck yeah, that's a warning. One of the things too is sometimes when we're working with newcomers, we do things like a 2-on-1 where it's like 2 possible sponsors or 2 people experiencing the steps help somebody through the 12 steps. That's an example where person or persons. Now, also, we're going to see some examples of possible people we could take our 5th step to. And I'm going to point out that most of them are not applicable in 2024. And yes, I did have to check my wall calendar to see what year it was. Where am I? You know? But so there might be people that you would tell part of your 5th step to, and then you would share the rest with somebody completely different. So now you can make a little note right here at intimate and confidential step to see page 96. because I want to, because it's like, okay, who should I take my fifth step to? Well, in 2024, our sort of first suggestion we'll find on page 96. So we're going to go, it's the second full paragraph. And it says, suppose now you are making your second visit to a man, middle of 96. He has read this volume and is prepared to go through with the 12 steps of the program of recovery. Having had the experience yourself, you can give him much practical advice. Let him know you are available if he wishes to make a decision, step 3, and tell his story, step 5. But do not insist upon it if he prefers to consult somebody else. So just in terms of the order, this book was written to go out into the world. And I might get a copy of this book and be a sole alcoholic living in Calgary, Alberta, and not know any other alcoholics or drug addicts or whatever brings you to this all-inclusive study. And the purpose of it was that I could follow its directions and recover. And so it's going to give me, so if I only have a copy of this book, I don't have a sponsor that I could take it to. I don't have an experienced member that I can share it with. It's me in this book. But again, we can accomplish a lot with this book alone, but we don't have to. So what I will say is look, I checked the calendar again. It wasn't going to change. It's a wall calendar, but I checked it in 2024. It makes sense. You can do it. You can do it with your sponsor. You know what I mean? And if you don't want to, you don't have to. I've had sponsees that are like, no, I want to do it with somebody else. I don't insist upon it. I don't. Cool. You don't have to. And keep in mind, when I sit with my sponsees, we did a lot of their 4th step together. So if they want to go take that to somebody else, heck yeah, that's no worries. And so also, if you're like, man, I don't want to do it with my sponsor, cool. You don't have to. Again, we've got so we have 46 people. I'm going to guess that most of them, you know what, I'll say 23. I'll say half. I'll say you could probably take your 5th step to half of the people in this room, in the Zoom room. You know what I mean? We got options. Some of you are like, no, not me. Some of you are like, yes, me. Yeah, we got options. I see the options. We can take our 5th step to. So we can do some international 5th step work. Believe me, I have. And we can take it to people all over the world that you never have to see again, unless you accidentally stumble upon each other in these little Zoom squares, you know what I mean? Yeah, so there's options. So that kind of makes sense. First and foremost, let's consider our sponsor. You don't have to. Secondly, let's consider an experienced 12-step member. That's who I would say let's start our consideration with. And then it's going to give us some options. And again, keep in mind the context of where we're at on page 74. I've got a copy of this book. I'm alone in the world and I'm trying to follow its suggestions. I don't have the advent of Zoom. I don't have a sponsor. We don't have a home group yet. It's just me with this book. Who could I take it to? So it says, those of us belonging to a religious denomination which requires confession must, and of course, will want to go to the properly appointed authority whose duty it is to receive it. Though we have no religious connection, we may still do well to talk with someone ordained by an established religion. We often find such a person quick to see and understand our problem. Of course, we sometimes encounter people who do not understand alcoholics. So what is our problem? My problem is that I'm blocked from God, my selfishness, my self-centeredness, my resentments, my fears, my guilt, my shame, my judgment, my so on, my defects, which are the same as my shortcomings, which is the exact nature of my wrongs. Pew, pew. That is what's blocking me. So people who are ordained by a religion might understand, okay, you're trying to get connected to God, absolutely. Yeah, it's a video call, it's always, I'm just like to make sure they're not fibbing. I caught that at the end. So I was just reading in the chat. It's like, okay, when I do an international 5th step, I like to do video call. Absolutely. We can absolutely video call is like, but not a phone call because I want to look them in the eyes and make sure they're not fibbing. I'm like, oh, fair enough. But you can do like, listen, there are people who have had to do 5th steps over the phone before Zoom, before video calls. You could get sober. But I mean, we could do it on a video call. Absolutely. Again, me trying to dispel the intimidation factor, and I'm like, look in the eyes. Oh, that's not helping take the fear of step 5 away. That's my bad. Oh gosh. Um, but yeah, often people in religion might understand that, hey, I need to get connected with God. I gotta get this stuff out so I can feel that connectedness, so I can build that relationship. Where I live in the world, there's a Franciscan retreat center not far by, and they do a number of things, including retreats. But a lot of the gentlemen that live there, they've committed themselves to receiving the 5 steps of alcoholics and drug addicts in our local community. And that's a really good example of a place that we could go to take that 5th step. And again, it's not mandatory. They're just throwing out options. So it says, if we cannot or would rather not do this, we search out our acquaintance for a closed mouth, understanding friend. And we got a whole bunch of those in this room, so you don't got to look too far. If you need to do a 5th step, you let us know. We'll get you sorted. Perhaps our doctor or psychologist will be the person. Now, this is where I get into a little bit of that Michael Scott, like, no, dear God, no. I don't know what your doctor is like, but I didn't usually a quick 15-minute, you know what I mean? Quick little in and out 15 minutes. And like, could you imagine going to the doctor and like, listen, what I have is a spiritual malady, and I'm positively bedeviled with these defects of character. And he's like, do you want a script for that? You know what I mean? Like that, no. Also, listen, I'm not criticizing psychologists and psychiatrists, but often the modality they take is a little bit counterintuitive to what we do. Also, turns out the going rate where I live is $200 an hour. I don't know how long your last 5th step took. I don't got the budget for that. Listen, that is not in my budget for step 5. So what I might say is, I mean, maybe not. I mean, if you have the budget for it, you do you. But and then it says, it may be one of our own family. No, no, just no. But we cannot disclose anything to our wives or parents. Could you imagine doing a 5th step with your spouse, or like, hey mom, I got some sex inventory, I gotta get on out. Nope. Nope. And to be fair, those were the things that we would not disclose to our wives or parents, which would hurt them and make them unhappy. And that's sort of why it's saying person or persons. It's given that option. We can just do our sponsor, or another drunk or addict or whatever. And it says, we have, and I love this, it says, we have no right to save our own skin at another person's expense. And that is a beautiful principle that we're going to see alive and well in the 9th step when we get there. That we're not here to save ourselves and throw anyone else under the bus. Such part of our story we tell to someone who will understand yet be unaffected. You know, understand and be unaffected? Sponsor, fellow 12-step member. They're usually pretty understanding and regularly unaffected, because we're like, oh yeah, me too. Yeah, I did that back in 04. Yeah, with the lights on and everything. You know, we're not bothered. I didn't expect that to make that joke. It shocked me as much as it did you. All right. So, you know what I was saying? The rule is, here's the rule. We got one rule. The rule is we must be hard on ourselves, but always considerate of others. And I think that's important. And it's not, by the way, hard on ourselves is not beating myself up, thinking I'm a bag of garbage hiding under the mess of my life. No, but holding myself to a standard and considerate of others and how my actions affect others. So notwithstanding the great necessity for discussing ourselves with someone, it may be that one is so situated that there is no suitable person available. Heck yeah, there's a lot of musts in this book, Rob. It's super musty. It's a musty book, lots of musts. Sorry, I will readily get, yeah. Notwithstanding the great necessity for discussing ourselves with someone, it may be that one is so situated that there is no suitable person available. No, no, this does not apply. No, 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 no. Absolutely not. No. If that is so, it is not so. You can make a little note. This is not so. No, no. Uh, this step may be postponed. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's never more painful than between your 4 and your 5. That sucks. I don't know that it sucks when I'm trying to put off the 5 because it feels scary, but it sucks. No, don't be doing that. No. Only if we hold ourselves in complete readiness to go through with it at the first opportunity. So we got lots of real first opportunities. We don't got to wait, get her done. And so here's a bit of an interesting thing. We're in the section of who we should do our 5th step with. And in the chapter, Working with Others, it tells us a lot about how we can effectively carry this message to others. But there's not a lot of direction given about how do I receive a 5th step. So we can Missy Elliott again these directions and see, and really this is who I need to be in order to receive a 5th step. So it says, we're very anxious that we talk to the right person. It is important that he be able to keep a confidence. Can I keep what I hear in the 5th step to myself? That is what I need to do. Keep a confidence. It's confidential. That he fully understand and approve of what we're driving at. Don't you worry. When I go through this with my sponsees, I'm like, I understand and approve. Approval. We'll find out that that's a defect because I've been seeking that for a while. But you're going to get it. I understand. I approve. Heck yeah. Because, yeah. That he will not try to change our plan. No, if anything, clearly I'm encouraging the plan. But we must not use this as a mere excuse to postpone. Again, no need to postpone, no need to put it off. But I also, again, with that in mind, that I got to be somebody that keeps a confidence, that I understand. And later on in the next paragraph, it's going to say that I be honored by this. It's a privilege to receive 5th steps, and I have to show up with that level of respect for it. I just want to share quickly about how I receive 5th steps. Another way, what to look for in a sponsor. Absolutely. But what I want to do is in how I receive 5th steps is or share a little bit about how I receive 5th steps. Now, keep in mind, I've already done I've sat with my sponsees as we wrote their inventory. I sat with them. So there's not, you know what I mean? I've already, a lot of my feedback, I already gave it. You know what I mean? And so after a while, I'm like, I need an activity. Like, I'm going to be present, but I need an activity. And so what I started to do was I started to write what I hear them say their defects of character are. I always start with selfish, which is how I act, and self-centered, which is how I think and I perceive. And I write down a list of their defects of character that I hear them say, not just for my own judgments of them. Like, I'm not just like, well, it's what they say. And then at the end, I give it to them. And I also have started to write, and actually I say started, I've been doing this for years, but I also write what I hear them say their sex ideal is. Because so often we don't know what's my sex, what are my defects, what is my sex ideal, what do I got to do, So I write it for them because it gives me an activity, and it's genuinely quite helpful. And before I ever do a 5th step, we always start with, I keep in mind my sponsees know, whenever we do any step work, I'm like, it's always good to start with the prayer. Did you want to pray? Did you want me to pray? I don't mind either way, every time. And then they think they're clever and they'll ask me that question ahead of time to throw me off. It works. But I learned to say, well, then you pray then. They weren't expecting that. Ooh, curveball. Just a little window into how my mind works. Terrifying. But we always start with the prayer. And I'm somebody, my first ever 5th step, I had to do it over 2 weeks. It was like 2 sessions. And that was really painful. That period in between the 2 sessions, man, that was painful. And I got a really high tolerance. I will 12-step all day, every day. So what I try to do for my sponsees, if they're open, if they're willing, I'll sit with them for the duration. Like, we will book off an afternoon, book off a day, and get it done. And I'm a big believer is if you wrote it, I will listen to it. If we are having discussion, we are not having it in the second column. It's not there. And that is just to save you like 8 hours of needless backstory that is not helpful. You know what I mean? So if you wrote it, I'll listen. And if we have discussion, it's going to be in the fourth column of resentments, not in the second column. And then I always ask, and I always ask it at the end, but there's times when I ask it at the beginning, when I get a sense that they're carrying this weight and they're carrying this fear, and it's an opportunity to rip off the Band-Aid. And what I ask is there anything else? Is there any deep, dark secret, anything you didn't write off or write down, anything that you just want to get off your chest that you need to share? I always ask it at the end, but sometimes at the beginning, I ask it as well. Just to create that space if needed. And sometimes you might be like, oh, so how do you know when you should ask it at the beginning? It's vibes. It's vibes. I don't have a like thing. You know, it's just vibes, which is also how I bird watch. It's based on vibes. You don't need that information as well either. Anywho, so top of 75. When we decide who is to hear our story, we waste no time. Quickly, we want to get this done, moving. It's painful being in between. It says we have a written inventory. Check, that's my fourth step. And we are prepared for a long talk. So if I am wondering, have I been searching and fearless in my inventory? Well, last week we saw that we've written down a lot. It's not a quantitative number. But I know that I've been searching and fearless and thorough. If I can say that, yep, this is going to be a long talk. We're going to be talking a while. Yep. So it says, we explain to our partner what we are about to do and why we have to do it. He should realize that we are engaged upon a life. Yeah, right now, we are engaged upon a life and death errand. That's what this is. I joke around, but I take it that seriously, that this is a matter of life and death for people like us. Most people approached in this way will be glad to help. They will be honored by our confidence. And that truly is something that I am honored when sponsees share with me their inventory. Honored. And, you know, I'll do it right before the fifth step promises. I want to share this with you. I couldn't even count how many times I've done a fifth step, you know, whether it's, whatever. And my first sponsor, we had to do it over 2 sessions, that was a whole thing. I then took it to 2 nuns, like subsequent inventories to subsequent nuns. And listen, if you, like me, thought I was like tough and like I had, ooh, you don't know all the things I did, I'm so bad and mysterious, I bored them. Two separate nuns, I bored them. They were absolutely bored, absolutely uninterested, completely disengaged. You know what I mean? And I've had where, people were like, I think I'm tough and scary. I actually don't. I'm squishy emotionally. I'm not scary. But yeah, I bored nuns. So again, if I have those times, I'm like, oh, you don't get it. I'm so tough. I'm so cool. I live down the streets. Boring nuns. And I've had, fifth steps not go the way that I thought. But here is my experience. I have never, and I mean never, regretted doing one. And here's my experience. I have never, and I really do mean never, regretted a spiritual action taken in Alcoholics Anonymous or Cocaine Anonymous or 12-step. Truly never regretted that. And I'm not saying I don't regret every decision I made, but I'm just saying spiritual action, those ones, not ever regretted. And so now is where we get the direction on how do we do our fifth step. Here it is. We pocket our pride and go to it, illuminating every twisted character, every dark cranny of the past. That's it. How do we do it? We go do it. That's the directions on doing the fifth step. Go do it. And I love that it is illuminating because I love the metaphor of God as light. And we see what happens when I'm in that darkness. I'm cut off from that light, right? That insanity of alcohol or drugs or whatever brings you to the study, it returns. And I relapse. You know what I mean? And it says, and these are the fifth step, the actual fifth step promises. We don't got to Missy Elliott them or bring any mid-2000s hip hop artist to interpret them. They're just the fifth step promises. No pop stars required. I know, it's not Missy Elliott, but it'll do. Yeah, they're pretty great. They're pretty great. Well, don't take my word for it. Let's find out. So it says, once we have taken this step, withholding nothing. So we shared that stuff that we didn't want to share. You know what I mean? Withholding nothing. We can look where it says withholding nothing. We are delighted. Y'all think, I'll tell you, I did not think the results of step 5 would be delighted. You know, if I had a little vision board for step 5, I dread, scary, judgment, rejection. Vision board is a very obscure reference that I have. I don't know why that's in my brain. Delighted wouldn't have been on it. I did not think the result of the 5th step would be delighted. But that's what's on offer. And here's my experience. If it doesn't happen immediately after the 5th step, that might be because I've got to take my quiet hour and do my 6 and 7. I'll tell you that story next week. So it says, we can look the world in the eye. I don't know about you, but when I came to the rooms, I was not looking anyone in the eye. I was intimately acquainted with the square floor that was in front of me. And I remember this is the old Glenmore group, way, way, way back when it was in Marda Loop. That's just for some of the Calgarians that are here. They had these pillars. It was a meeting room that was in a basement under a restaurant, and it had these pillars. And do you know what I would do? I would hide right behind the pole so they wouldn't see me. Chair people caught on to that and started calling me rude. You know what I mean? I can look the world in the eye. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease. Some of you guys know that big book bounce around that I do on the topic of loneliness. You know, loneliness, it has nothing to do with separation between me and another human being. It has everything to do with separation from God. Because at this point, I can now be alone at perfect peace and ease. That is what is available. Man, that loneliness, we're going to see it vanish in ourselves. Stay tuned for some of because there's many of them, step 12 promises, when we talk about how we're going to see that vanish in others. Our fears fall from us. You know what's incredible about that? I didn't do it. The fears fall. I didn't do it. I didn't overcome them. I didn't get crazy brave and punch the fears away. No, it falls for me. And when it falls for me, I know I didn't do it. I know I received the gift. I received the gift. We're going to talk a lot more about I'm not doing the heavy lifting. I'm taking some surrendered action. We're going to talk about that next week. Our fears fall from us. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. So when I got here, I might have an over there Santa Claus idea of God up in the sky or over there, not interested in me. But now I'm beginning to feel that nearness, that something is with me. In fact, perhaps something is deep down within my heart. Perhaps. There's a solution reference. There's a solution joke. And it says we may have had certain spiritual beliefs. My beliefs do not keep me sober. But we now begin to have a spiritual experience. That's what I need. And I'm beginning to have it right here. This is the start of it. And if nothing less than this, and I am going to relapse. It says and here's how we know the feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. A strong feeling that, man, this thing, the obsession is being lifted. Now, it's not going to stay lifted if I stop here. We feel we are on the capital B, capital H, broad highway, walking hand in hand with the capital S, capital U, Spirit of the universe. And what I want to point out is that broad highway, that Spirit of the universe. We last spoke about those in We Agnostics. See, in We Agnostics is maybe you can join us on the broad highway, you know, with this attitude that there could be a power greater than myself, that you can join us on this broad highway. But now we're on the highway. What I want to point out, it is a highway. It is not a destination. It is a path. It is a road. It is a way of life. And now we're on it. But what I want to point out is hand in hand with the Spirit of the universe, hand in hand. You know, I've been talking about this lately. My job as a sponsor is to take my sponsee's hand and put it in God's hands. That's my job. See, I'm not walking this thing alone. I'm not on this journey alone. I'm walking with the God that I didn't like and I didn't understand and I thought was lame when I got here, but this power that works in my life, and I'm building a relationship. And man, that happens. But I got to do this fifth step. So join us next week where we're going to talk about the quiet hour in 6 and 7. And you'll see me go on for a long time about not many paragraphs. Whee! So stick around for that. I'll stop the recording and we'll open it up.